Welcome to the deep dive. We take the sources you share this time. It's some really cool science material about ecosystems, and we dive deep to pull out the essentials.
Exactly. And today's mission is all about the energy flow. We're sort of like energy detectives figuring out where it all goes.
Right. We're going beyond just drawing arrows between animals. You want to understand the thermodynamics of your lunch, basically.
We know energy moves from one living thing to another. That's the easy part. The real puzzle is why so much of it seems to just disappear along the way.
Yeah, it is a bit strange when you first think about it. We all get the basics. Plants make energy, smaller things eat plants, bigger things eat them. Okay. But here's the big question, and I want you to really ponder this one for a moment. If you eat something and that something ate a plant, why don't you get all the energy? Why isn't it ever 100% efficient? Where does that energy, vanish to?
It feels like it should be simple, right? Eat food, get energy. All of it.
If only. So to crack this, we have to go back to the absolute beginning. Where does the energy originate? A food chain, at its core, is just how we track energy and matter moving from one organism to the next.
And the foundation, the starting point for almost all life, especially that we see around us, is the producers. These are things like plants, algae, phytoplankton, organisms that grab the sun's energy.
Do photosynthesis, yeah. They turn sunlight into chemical energy, into food. They're the ultimate source.
Absolutely. So your classic example, sun provides energy.
To the grass. The grass is the producer.
Then a rabbit eats the grass.
Rabbit's the primary consumer.
And maybe a fox eats the rabbit.
Fox is the secondary consumer. That's the flow. The grass starts with, let's say, 100% of the energy it managed to capture.
But here's where it gets really interesting, something often skipped in basic diagrams. Not all producers need sunlight. Most do, sure. But think about places where sunlight just doesn't reach.
Oh, yeah. This was in the slides, and it was a real aha moment for me, too. Like deep, deep ocean trenches or pitch black caves. How does life even start there? No sun at all.
They use chemicals instead of light. It's a process called chemosynthesis. Instead of photosynthesis, you have these specialized bacteria, often near hydrothermal vents or in deep rock, pulling energy from chemical bonds, like from hydrogen sulfide, stuff like that.
Wow, so no green leaves, just chemical reactions powering a whole ecosystem. Giant tube worms, weird crabs, all living in total darkness, off energy from the earth itself.
Exactly. It shows how incredibly adaptable life is. It finds a way, even without the sun. It figures out a different power source.
Yeah.
That's why life is pretty much everywhere.
Okay, so producers kick things off using either light or chemicals. But the moment something eats that producer, everything changes. Now we're talking about consumers.
Yep, consumers are organisms that have to eat other living things to get their energy. Can't make it themselves.
And we break these down. First up are the primary consumers. These are the herbivores, the plant eaters, your deer, your caterpillars, rabbits, like in our example, or even tiny zooplankton eating tiny phytoplankton in the ocean.
Okay, interactive moment here for you listening. Just quickly, think about what makes a good herbivore. What kind of special gear do they need to actually survive on plants?
It's not easy, right? Plants have tough cell walls, they're fibrous. The source material mentions things like specialized teeth, really strong, flat ones for grinding, or super complex digestive systems. Think cows with multiple stomachs.
Yeah, it's a whole biological engineering challenge just to get nutrients out of leaves and stems.
So after the plant eaters, we move up the chain to secondary and tertiary consumers. These are the carnivores eating meat or omnivores eating both.
Your foxes, eagles, sharks, wolves, they're eating the eaters.
Which brings us back to us humans. Where do we fit? The material classifies us typically as omnivores. That makes our position complicated, doesn't it?
It really does. It's a crucial point. Unlike, say, a hawk that mostly eats rodents, making it primarily a secondary consumer, we humans are flexible. We eat salad.
Primary consumer, right there.
We eat chicken.
Secondary consumer, since chickens eat grains or insects.
Or we eat a big tuna.
Which ate smaller fish, which ate smaller things, making us potentially a tertiary or even quaternary consumer. Our diet means we can tap into multiple levels of the food chain.
But, and this is the absolute key point we've been building towards, no matter which level we're eating at, we're all bound by this fundamental law. The 10% rule.
Ah, yes, the 10% rule. This is the core of the energy
It
mistake.
is. It shapes pretty much everything about an ecosystem structure. The rule states that at each step, each transfer of energy up the food chain, only about 10% the energy from the lower level actually becomes biomass in the next level.
Hold on, only 10%? That sounds incredibly inefficient. Like, why hasn't evolution done better? Where on earth does the other 90% go? Just poof.
Not poof, exactly. It's not waste in the sense of being useless. It's the cost of living.
Hmm.
Think about charging your phone. The charger gets warm, the phone gets warm. That's energy loss is heat. Same idea.
Okay.
When that rabbit eats the grass, most of the energy locked in that grass, about 90% of it, gets used up by the rabbit itself, just for staying alive.
So the 90% is used for moving around, breathing, keeping warm, especially for mammals digesting the food, growing, reproducing, all the biological processes.
Precisely. It's the energy tax for being alive.
Mhm.
And that energy eventually dissipates into the environment, mostly as heat, which isn't really useful for the next consumer in line.
And because this happens at every single step, the effect multiplies, doesn't it?
Dramatically. Let's use the numbers from the source material. Say the grass starts with 1,000 units of energy. Could be kilocalories, joules, whatever unit you like.
Okay, 1,000 units in the grass. The primary consumer, the rabbit, eats the grass. It only gets 10% of that. So
100 units.
exactly. 900 units were used just to be a rabbit. Now, the secondary consumer, the fox, eats the rabbit, which has 100 units stored. Fox gets 10% of that 100 units. So only 10 units.
Right. And if something bigger, like a lynx or an eagle, ate the fox.
It would only get 10% of those 10 units. Just one unit. Wow. Okay, I see now why food chains rarely go beyond like 4 or 5 levels. There's just hardly any energy left at the top.
That's exactly it. It dictates the biomass at each level. You need a huge base of producers to support a smaller number of herbivores and an even smaller number of carnivores. Top predators are always relatively rare because the energy budget up there is incredibly tight.
This leads perfectly into the calculation challenge from the source material. Okay, everyone, get your thinking caps on, maybe grab a pencil.
Here's the scenario. A patch of grass captures 5,000 kilocalories of Kekel's energy. The food chain is simple. Grass dash rabbit dash fox. How much of that initial 5,000 kilocal actually makes it into the fox?
Remember the rule. Only 10% moves up at each step. 2 steps here. Grass to rabbit, then rabbit to fox.
Step 1. The rabbit eats the grass. 5,000 kilocal. That gets 10%. So 10% of 5,000 is 500 kilocal. The rabbit now holds 500 kilocal. It burned through 4,500 kilocal just living.
Step 2. The fox eats the rabbit, which holds 500 kilocal. The fox gets 10% of that. 10% of 500 is 50 kilocal.
And that's our answer. Just 50 kilocal. From 5,000 down to 50 in just 2 transfers.
Yeah.
That really shows the massive drop-off.
It really does. That pyramid shape you always see in textbooks makes perfect sense now. It's an energy pyramid. But, you know, real life isn't usually a neat straight line like grass rabbit, fast fox. It's messier.
Much messier, which is why scientists prefer to talk about food webs rather than just food chains.
Right. A food web connects multiple food chains. It shows that the rabbit might eat this grass or that clover, and the fox might eat the rabbit or maybe some mice, or even berries if it's an omnivore.
Exactly. It's a network of feeding relationships. It gives a much more realistic picture of how energy actually flows through an ecosystem, showing all the different pathways and connections.
Looking at a food web diagram, it's complex, lots of arrows going everywhere, but it highlights something crucial. Everything's connected. No species lives in a vacuum.
And this connects directly back to the 10% rule and the consequences. The source asks a really good question. What happens if one species is suddenly removed? Let's stick with our rabbit. Imagine a disease wipes out most of the rabbits in that area.
Okay, no more rabbits, or very few. The effects would ripple outwards, wouldn't they? Like, downwards first, the grass and clover the rabbits usually eat.
They might suddenly start growing like crazy, right? Less grazing pressure. You might see a temporary boom in those plant populations.
But looking up the web, the foxes that relied heavily on rabbits.
They're in trouble. Suddenly, a major food source is gone. They'd have to switch entirely to other prey, maybe hunt more mice, more birds, whatever else is available. Or, if they can't adapt or find enough alternatives, their own numbers might crash.
And that increased pressure on the mice could then affect their food sources or the other predators that also eat mice. It just cascades through the system.
It really does. The food web shows why ecosystems can be so sensitive. Removing one link puts stress on many others. Now, the web structure provides some resilience. The fox can eat mice instead of rabbits. Those are alternative pathways.
So the whole thing doesn't instantly collapse.
Not usually, no. But it definitely destabilizes it. Those alternative links, that biodiversity, acts like an insurance policy. The more connections, the more resilient the web generally is to losing one component. But because energy is so limited by that 10% rule at each step, any disruption has magnified effects further up.
Wow. Okay, so this dive into energy has been, well, really eye-opening. We went from just who eats who to the actual physics limiting life.
Yeah, it's fundamental. So let's quickly recap the big takeaways for everyone listening. First, food chains track energy and matter, and the base often starts with photosynthesis, but remember that cool alternative chemosynthesis in dark places.
Second, and this is the big one, energy transfer is super inefficient. That 10% rule means about 90% is lost as heat used for metabolism at every single step up the chain.
And third, real ecosystems are complex food webs, not simple chains. These webs show how interconnected life is and how removing even one species can send shockwaves through the system because of those tight energy constraints.
All right, now for your final thought to chew on, building on what we've discussed. Think about your own food web. You, as an omnivore, are connected to lots of different chains. Where do you think the biggest energy losses happen before the food even gets to you?
And take it a step further. Considering how much energy is lost at each step, think about major environmental changes happening now, like climate change affecting plant growth, or habitat destruction removing certain animals. How could those disruptions at the bottom of the food web, impacting the producers or primary consumers, affect the energy available way up the chain, potentially even for us?
That 90% loss magnifies any problem at the base, doesn't it? Something small for the grass becomes a huge issue for the top predator. Definitely something to think about.
Keep looking at the world through that energy lens. It explains a lot.
Absolutely. Keep questioning, keep analyzing. Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.